Welcome to this journey through one of the most disturbing cases recorded in the history of the Smoky Mountains. Before we begin, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact time you're listening to this narration. We're interested in knowing to which places and at what times of day or night these documented accounts reach. The wind howls through the pines of Tennessee's Smoky Mountains with a particular tone in autumn. Those who have heard it say it carries echoes, not of animals or storms, but of something else entirely. In the fall of 1879, 5 men entered the Blackwood mine near the settlement of Cades Cove. According to all official records, not one of them ever emerged. What happened in those tunnels has been the subject of speculation for decades. The Blackwood brothers, Isaiah, Elijah, and Jeremiah, along with 2 hired men, Thomas Green and Frederick Walsh, vanished without explanation. The mine itself, now collapsed and sealed by the Tennessee Mining Authority in 1962, holds secrets that perhaps should remain buried. The settlement of Cades Cove sits nestled in a valley surrounded by the imposing ridges of the Smoky Mountains. In 1879, it was home to roughly 300 souls, farmers, tradespeople, and miners who carved their existence from the unforgiving landscape. The Blackwood family had lived there for 3 generations, eventually acquiring land with promising mineral deposits on the northwestern slope of what locals called Hollow Ridge. The name itself came from the peculiar acoustics of the area. Sounds seemed to disappear there, absorbed by the dense forest and strange rock formations. The Blackwood patriarch, Nathaniel, had been a farmer of modest means who arrived in the area in 1817. According to county land records, he acquired the initial parcel through a government land grant after serving in the War of 1812. His eldest son, Abraham, expanded the family holdings during the 1830s and 1840s, purchasing adjacent properties from neighbors eager to move westward. It was Abraham who first noticed the unusual black stones that occasionally surfaced after heavy rains, stones with a weight and luster unlike common coal. Abraham Blackwood died in 1862 during the turmoil of the Civil War. His 3 sons, Isaiah, Elijah, and Jeremiah, inherited the property and his suspicions about what might lie beneath it. The war delayed their investigations, as did the economic hardships that followed, but by 1875, the brothers had accumulated enough capital to begin preliminary excavations. Isaiah Blackwood, the eldest at 38, was described in county records as a man of serious disposition and considerable ambition. His marriage to Elizabeth Carmichael in 1865 had connected the family to wealthier circles in Knoxville, providing both social connections and potential investors. Elizabeth, however, rarely visited the mine site, preferring to remain at their more comfortable home in town. The couple remained childless, a source of tension mentioned in Elizabeth's private correspondence with her sister, preserved in the Knoxville Historical Society archives. Elijah, 34, and Jeremiah, 29, were noted as being similarly industrious, though of more reserved character. Neither had married. According to local accounts, they were devoted entirely to the family business, often working from dawn until well after dusk. Jeremiah, the youngest, had received some formal education at a college in Nashville before the war interrupted his studies. He maintained a correspondence with several professors and was known to read scientific journals by lamplight. The Blackwood Mining Company was formally established in 1876 after several promising veins of coal were discovered. But local accounts suggest the brothers were searching for something else entirely. The coal, it seems, was merely a commercial front, a way to fund their true pursuit. According to the Blount County Register, dated June 12, 1879, Isaiah Blackwood had traveled as far as Knoxville to seek investors for an operation he described as certain to yield unprecedented returns. The nature of these returns was never specified in public documents. When pressed, he becomes evasive, saying only that those who commit now will be richly rewarded when the full extent of the discovery becomes known. Court records from August 1879 indicate the brothers hired Thomas Green, 42, a mining engineer from Pennsylvania with experience in the anthracite regions, and Frederick Walsh, 36, described as a geologist of some reputation who had previously consulted for railway companies. Their contracts, preserved in the Blount County Courthouse until a fire damaged portions of the archive in 1963, stipulated unusually high compensation, nearly 3 times the going rate for similar positions. One potential investor, James Harrington, wrote in his business journal, "Blackwood speaks with conviction, but remains frustratingly vague about the specific mineral deposits." More tellingly, both contracts contained extensive confidentiality clauses with severe penalties for disclosure of any information related to the mining operation. What were the Blackwood brothers willing to pay so dearly for? And why did they require expertise beyond simple coal extraction? "And there was always something peculiar about that ridge," wrote Martha Trentham in her personal journal dated 1905. Martha was the wife of Josiah Trentham, who owned the neighboring property. The Blackwoods were tight-lipped about their business, but my Josiah said he'd seen strange equipment being hauled up there. Not just mining tools, but crates marked with words he didn't recognize. Scientific instruments, perhaps. Isaiah would say only that they were measuring things. Martha's journal, discovered during a renovation of the old Trentham homestead in 1958, provides one of the few contemporaneous accounts from someone outside the Blackwood operation. She describes a dinner in late August 1879 when the Blackwoods hosted their newly arrived experts. Mr. Green seemed a pleasant enough gentleman, though tired from his journey. The other one, Walsh, barely spoke during the meal, but watched everything with the intensity of a hawk. What struck me most was how the 3 brothers deferred to him on certain matters. They, who never took advice from anyone, she continues. After dinner, Isaiah showed them something wrapped in cloth. I couldn't see what it was, but the reaction was immediate. Mr. Walsh nearly dropped his glass, and Mr. Green kept asking where they'd found it. Jeremiah mentioned the lower seam, and Elijah quickly hushed him. They noticed me then, and Isaiah put whatever it was back into his pocket. The conversation turned to mundane matters, but the mood had changed entirely. The operation commenced in earnest by late summer of 1879. Workers from Cades Cove and surrounding communities were hired to construct the initial shaft and supporting structures. Notably, according to payroll ledgers recovered in 1953, these local men were employed only for surface work. None were permitted to enter the mine once digging began in September. Silas Cooper, a carpenter who helped build the mine's outbuildings, provided a statement to the Maryville Times in 1925, when he was 79 years old. They was particular about that mine entrance. Mr. Isaiah had us build it twice, said the first wasn't right, had to have these heavy doors that sealed tight. Said it was for safety, but I never seen a coal mine needing doors like that. More like a bank vault than a mine shaft. Cooper's account continues. There was a second structure, too, about 50 yards from the main entrance. Small building, sturdy as a fortress. No windows, just a heavy door with a serious lock. We called it the strong room. Mr. Elijah supervised that construction personally, checking every nail and board. Wouldn't say what it was for, but we hauled in some mighty strange equipment. Brass instruments with dials, glass containers, things I'd never seen before or since. Another worker, Daniel McCoy, recalled in the same article, "They had us dig a pit behind that strong room, line it with brick. 8 feet deep, circular like a well but dry. They put a metal plate at the bottom and some kind of machinery on top. Looked like something you'd see at a university, not a mining operation." When I asked Mr. Jeremiah about it, he just said it was for processing samples. But I've worked coal mines before, and that wasn't like any processing I ever seen. By October 1879, the operation had become increasingly secretive. Local workers were dismissed, with only the Blackwood brothers, Green, and Walsh remaining. The last known supply delivery occurred on October 23rd, as recorded in the ledger of Abernathy's General Store in Cades Cove. The purchase included unusual quantities of kerosene, salt, and blank journals, along with standard mining supplies. Abernathy's ledger, preserved by the storekeeper's descendants and donated to the Tennessee Historical Commission in 1971, contains a marginal note next to this entry. J.B. Jeremiah Blackwood looking unwell, thin, eyes sunken, hands shaking so bad he could hardly sign the receipt. When asked, said he wasn't sleeping well. Mentioned noises in the walls of his room. It was on November 17, 1879, that Joseph Miller, who delivered mail to the mine office weekly, found the site completely abandoned. The office door stood open, papers scattered across the floor as if in haste. A lantern remained lit on the desk. The mine entrance was sealed, not collapsed, but deliberately locked from the inside. Miller's sworn statement to the Blount County Sheriff describes a sense of wrongness that made the hair stand up on my neck, like the air itself was holding its breath. Miller's full statement, only partially included in the official record, but preserved in his family Bible with a notation that it was the truth, though the sheriff wouldn't write it all down, provides additional details. The strong room door was open too, but nothing seemed disturbed inside. There were papers covered with figures and drawings I couldn't make sense of. A glass case contained rocks, unlike any I've seen, black but with flecks that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. Most peculiar was the brick pit behind the building. The machinery was gone, but the metal plate remained. It was covered with scratches, as though something had tried to claw its way up from below. The sheriff's investigation was perfunctory at best. The official report, dated November 25, 1879, concludes, "The Blackwood brothers and their associates appear to have abandoned their mining operation for reasons unknown. No signs of violence or foul play were evident. The property has been secured pending the emergence of rightful claimants." This clinical assessment fails to address numerous inconsistencies. Why would successful businessmen abandon valuable equipment? Why were their horses still in the stable, unfed for days? Why was a half-eaten meal still on the table in the office? And, most puzzling of all, why was the mine sealed from within? Deputy Samuel Lockwood, who assisted in the investigation, later confided to his son, as recorded in the Lockwood family history compiled in 1923. "Sheriff didn't want to go inside that mine. None of us did, truth be told. There was a feeling about the place, like standing at the edge of a deep pit in the dark. You can't see what's below, but you sense the emptiness. We reported what we could see and left the rest alone. Some places are best left undisturbed." The families of Green and Walsh arrived from Pennsylvania and Massachusetts, respectively, in December 1879. Their inquiries were met with bureaucratic indifference. With no bodies, no evidence of crime, and no witnesses, the case was classified as a simple disappearance. The mine property fell into legal limbo, with no heirs coming forward to claim the Blackwood estate. Sarah Green, the 16-year-old daughter of the missing engineer, kept a journal during her time in Tennessee. In an entry dated December 12, 1879, she wrote, "Mother continues to press the sheriff for answers, but he has none to give, or none he will share. Today we visited the mine site, though officials advised against it. The forest seems to close around it, as though trying to reclaim the space and erase what happened there. I felt a heaviness in the air, a pressure behind my eyes. Mother called me fanciful, but she too seemed eager to leave. Near the sealed entrance I found a scrap of paper that might have been from Father's notebook. On it was written, in his hand, 'It responds to sound.' God help us, it responds to sound." Elizabeth Blackwood, Isaiah's wife, refused to travel to Cades Cove, insisting that her husband would contact her when he was able. According to correspondence with her attorney, she believed the brothers had discovered something valuable and gone into hiding to protect it. She initiated no search, filed no missing persons report, and eventually relocated to Charleston, South Carolina in 1881. She never remarried and, upon her death in 1914, left her modest estate to a nephew, making no mention of her husband in her will. "The locals wouldn't go near that place," wrote Reverend William McNeil. In his parish records for the Cades Cove Methodist Church in 1880, they say at night you can hear sounds coming from within the sealed mine. Not cave-ins or settling earth, but something else. I counsel them against superstition. But I must admit, when I visited the site to offer prayers for the missing men, I too felt a deep unease. The silence there has weight to it. McNeil's records, transcribed and preserved by the Methodist Historical Society, contain another entry from June 1880. Josiah Trentham reports that the Blackwood horses, which were sold at auction to settle outstanding debts, have all died or gone lame. Similarly, tools and equipment from the mine, now dispersed throughout the community, seem to bring misfortune. Daniel McCoy's saw, purchased from the liquidation, shattered and nearly took his hand. The lantern from the office, now in Adam Lawson's possession, refuses to light despite ample oil. Such tales encourage superstition, which I must discourage, yet the pattern is difficult to dismiss entirely. The Blackwood mine might have faded from memory entirely if not for an ambitious graduate student named Howard Reynolds from the University of Tennessee. In 1952, while researching Appalachian mining practices for his doctoral thesis, Reynolds uncovered references to the Blackwood disappearance. Intrigued by the historical anomaly, he began collecting documents, interviewing elderly residents of the region, and piecing together the fragmented story. Reynolds's research notes, archived at the University of Tennessee Library, reveal a growing obsession with the case. The official explanation makes no sense, he wrote in March 1953. The Blackwoods were experienced businessmen who had invested considerable capital in their operation. The sudden abandonment contradicts everything known about their character and circumstances. Furthermore, the geological surveys I've reviewed indicate that the Hollow Ridge site should not have contained significant coal deposits at all. What then? Were they mining? Reynolds tracked down Sarah Green, by then an elderly woman living in Philadelphia. Her interview, transcribed in his notes, provides disturbing context. Father was not prone to flights of fancy. He was a practical man, methodical in his work and his thinking. But his letters changed after he arrived in Tennessee. At first, he wrote of promising findings and a cordial working relationship with the Blackwoods. By September, his tone had shifted. He mentioned unusual properties in the mineral samples and disagreements about how to proceed. His final letter, received just days before the disappearance, contained a passage that has haunted me all these years. "We've gone too deep. The material changes as we descend. It's not just a mineral deposit, it's something else entirely. Isaiah won't stop despite the warnings. He believes we've found something that will change everything. I fear he may be right, though not in the way he imagines." On June 12, 1953, Reynolds obtained permission from the Tennessee Department of Conservation to visit the abandoned mine site, which by then had been incorporated into the newly established Great Smoky Mountains National Park. His field notes from that day describe the remains of structures reclaimed by forest, the mine entrance still visible but collapsed, and an unusual discovery, a metal container buried beneath the rotted floorboards of what had been the mine office. The container held a leather-bound journal, its pages mostly rendered illegible by moisture and time. Several passages, however, remained decipherable. The handwriting matched samples of Isaiah Blackwood's signature from county records. Reynolds transcribed what he could. October 10, 1879. F.W. confirms our suspicions regarding the unusual properties of the samples. The mineral exhibits characteristics inconsistent with any known element. When exposed to certain conditions, it demonstrates remarkable effects which I hesitate to detail even in these private pages. We have agreed to proceed with caution. October 11, 1879. Tunnel has reached 220 feet. The vein widens as we progress deeper. T.G. Reports unusual temperature variations that cannot be explained by conventional geology. The instruments confirm it. We are on the right track. October 17, 1879. Jeremiah experienced the episode again last night. He insisted he could hear them moving in the walls of his room, though we heard nothing. I fear the proximity to the samples is having an effect. We have moved the specimens to the secured chamber within the main shaft. October 21st, 1879. The sounds are no longer subjective. All 5 of us heard them today, not cave-ins or settling, something else. FW suggests we seal the lower chamber and suspend operations. E disagrees vehemently. The potential value is too great to abandon. The final legible entry, dated November 15, 1879, 2 days before the mine was found abandoned, contains only a single line. It is too late. They are coming through. Reynolds became convinced that the Blackwoods had discovered something unprecedented, perhaps a new mineral or gas with unusual properties. He theorized that exposure to this substance might have caused hallucinations, paranoia, or other psychological effects that led to tragedy. The men might have become disoriented, suffered accidents in the mine, or even turned on each other. His notes from late June 1953 detail a series of interviews with elderly residents who remembered local legends about Hollow Ridge. Emma Davis, 91 at the time of the interview, recalled stories from her grandmother. The Cherokee wouldn't camp there, said the ground was wrong. It didn't hold sound right. Birds don't sing there, even now. It's always been a quiet place, but not the peaceful kind of quiet. The hungry kind. William Trentham, grandson of Josiah and Martha, shared family stories about the Blackwoods. My grandparents said Isaiah was changed after they dug that first shaft. Used to be sociable, but became withdrawn. Grandfather once overheard him telling Elijah, "It's like looking through a window into somewhere else." They thought he meant a metaphor for wealth or opportunity. Later, they weren't so sure. In July 1953, Reynolds requested permission to excavate the collapsed mine entrance. His application was denied by park authorities, citing safety concerns. Undeterred, he continued his research, focusing on unusual geological features of Hollow Ridge and any historical accounts of similar phenomena in the region. According to his research diary, Reynolds contacted the United States Geological Survey in August 1953, inquiring about any unusual mineral deposits or geological anomalies documented in the Smoky Mountains region. The response, filed with his papers, was perfunctory. No significant atypical formations or minerals have been officially recorded at the coordinates you provided. Standard coal deposits and typical Appalachian geological features only. Yet Reynolds noted a discrepancy. USGS records indicate a geological survey was conducted in the Hollow Ridge area in 1882, just 3 years after the Blackwood incident. The report is listed in the catalog but missing from the archives. When I inquired about this, I was told the document was likely lost during an office relocation in the 1920s. Convenient. Throughout September 1953, Reynolds expanded his investigation, corresponding with mining historians, geologists, and archivists throughout the eastern United States. His letters became increasingly urgent, often referencing time constraints and growing concerns about outside interference. In a letter to his faculty advisor, dated September 30th, he wrote, "I believe I'm being followed. Twice this week, I've noticed the same man near the library when I'm reviewing the Blackwood materials. Yesterday, my apartment showed signs of entry, though nothing was taken. I've secured my most important findings in a safe deposit box. If anything should happen, please ensure this research continues." Then, in October 1953, Reynolds himself disappeared. According to his roommate at the university, Reynolds left their shared apartment on the evening of October 17th, claiming he had made a breakthrough and needed to check something at the library. He never returned. His vehicle was discovered 3 days later, parked on a service road within the national park, approximately 2 miles from the Blackwood mine site. Despite an extensive search by park rangers and local authorities, no trace of Reynolds was ever found. The official report concluded that Reynolds likely suffered an accident while hiking in the rugged terrain, perhaps falling into a ravine or becoming disoriented in the dense forest. Yet his disappearance bears unsettling parallels to the case that had consumed his attention. Dr. Marilyn Haywood, a professor of geology who had occasionally advised Reynolds, provided a statement to university officials. Howard was meticulous in his planning and highly experienced in backcountry navigation. The suggestion that he would hike unprepared into difficult terrain at dusk defies everything I knew about him. Furthermore, he had expressed to me certain concerns about his research that I initially dismissed as academic paranoia. I now wonder if there was more substance to his fears than I recognized. The nature of these concerns was never officially recorded. However, a partial draft of Reynolds's thesis, found among his possessions, contains a troubling passage in the margin, handwritten and subsequently crossed out. The geographical anomalies extend beyond the mine site. Testing indicates a radius of influence that continues to expand. The implications are staggering if confirmed. The question is no longer what the Blackwoods found, but whether they released something that cannot be contained. In 1962, as part of a hazard mitigation program, the Tennessee Mining Authority conducted surveys of abandoned mine sites throughout the state. The Blackwood mine, now little more than a depression in the hillside, was officially sealed with concrete on November 17, 1962, exactly 83 years to the day after Joseph Miller discovered the site abandoned. The foreman of the sealing operation, Robert Crowley, filed an unusual addendum to his standard report. Crew members reported auditory anomalies while working at the Blackwood site. Several complained of headaches and disorientation. Foreman recommends no further activity at this location. The request for elaboration from his superiors was met with Crowley's resignation letter. He and his family relocated to Ohio the following month. Attempts to contact him for this investigation were unsuccessful. An interview with James Watkins, one of the workers on Crowley's crew, conducted in 1967 by a journalist researching Appalachian mining history, provides more detail. We all heard it, like whispering coming from inside the hillside. Not words exactly, but something trying to sound like words. Roberts got it worst. He was operating the concrete mixer closest to the opening. Started complaining his skin felt wrong, like something was moving underneath it. By lunchtime, he was seeing things that weren't there. Crowley sent him home, finished the job himself. Next morning, Roberts couldn't remember anything about the day before. Doctor said it was heat exhaustion, but it was October, cool and cloudy. For decades, the story of the Blackwood mine remained buried in archives and local folklore. Then, in the spring of 1967, a discovery at the University of Pennsylvania brought renewed attention to the case. Among the personal effects of Thomas Green, the mining engineer who vanished with the Blackwoods, a series of letters was found during the cataloging of alumni records. These letters, written by Green to his colleague, Professor William Harrison, between July and October 1879, provide the most substantive clues yet about what the Blackwood operation might have truly involved. The final letter, dated October 12, 1879, reads in part, "The properties of this mineral defy conventional explanation. It responds to electrical current in ways I've never witnessed, and samples in proximity to one another seem to maintain a kind of resonance regardless of distance. Isaiah believes we've discovered something revolutionary, and Walsh agrees, though he remains more cautious in his assessment. The brothers have taken to calling it black iron, though it bears little resemblance to ferrous material. More concerning are the physical effects. Prolonged handling leaves a numbness in the fingers that persists for hours. Walsh has developed a persistent tremor in his right hand. Young Jeremiah complains of hearing voices when no one is speaking. At first we attributed this to the acoustic properties of the mine, but now I wonder. Isaiah dismisses these concerns. He's becoming increasingly fixated on reaching the main deposit. Something about this place feels wrong, Harrison. Were it not for the contractual obligations and the genuinely anomalous nature of our findings, I would have departed weeks ago. The locals refuse to approach the mine, though they won't say why directly. I've heard whispers about the ridge, that the Cherokee avoided it, that animals won't den there. Superstition surely, yet in my darker moments I find myself giving it credence. We've sealed the lower shaft where the main vein runs deepest. Only the 5 of us have access. What we've found there, I hesitate to commit it to paper. I will say only that the material becomes more concentrated as we descend, and its properties more pronounced. Isaiah is convinced we're approaching something unprecedented. The source, he calls it. I have secured samples for independent analysis. They are sealed in lead containers, which seems to dampen their unusual properties. I plan to send them to you within the fortnight, along with my complete notes. Should anything delay this correspondence, I trust you will make appropriate inquiries. No samples or further correspondence ever arrived at the University of Pennsylvania. Professor Harrison did indeed make inquiries upon failing to hear from his colleague, but as we've seen, the official investigation was perfunctory at best. Harrison's letters to authorities in Tennessee, preserved in university archives, went largely unanswered. Harrison's personal journal, discovered among his effects after his death in 1907, reveals that he traveled to Tennessee himself in early 1880. His entry from January 18th reads, "The local authorities are either incompetent or deliberately obstructive. They show no interest in pursuing the matter beyond their initial cursory investigation." When I mentioned Green's final letter and its references to unusual mineral properties, Sheriff Davis became visibly uncomfortable and suggested I return to Pennsylvania and leave Tennessee matters to Tennesseans. A subsequent entry, dated January 21st, 1880, demonstrates Harrison's frustration. "Visited the mine site today, despite warnings to stay away. The entrance has indeed been sealed from within, massive timbers braced against the doors. No signs of violence or struggle evident, yet the scene suggests hasty departure. Most peculiar was the silence, a profound absence of sound that seemed to extend in a perfect circle around the site. No birdsong, no insect noise, not even the sound of wind in the trees, though I could see branches moving. I collected soil samples from near the mine entrance for analysis." His final entry regarding the trip, dated January 25, 1880. Samples proved unremarkable under initial testing. However, I experienced a most disturbing phenomenon last night. The soil was stored in my hotel room in glass vials. I was awakened by what sounded like faint tapping from within the containers. When examined by lamplight, the soil appeared to be moving slightly, though I could detect no insects or other organisms that might explain the movement. I have disposed of the samples and will depart for Pennsylvania tomorrow. Some mysteries, perhaps, are best left unsolved. The academic community has largely dismissed the Blackwood incident as a case of industrial accident, perhaps involving pockets of natural gas that could explain both the disappearances and the reported auditory and psychological disturbances. The absence of bodies is attributed to the brothers and their associates fleeing after a catastrophic event, though this theory fails to explain why they would seal the mine from within or leave all their possessions behind. More esoteric interpretations have emerged in fringe publications. Some suggest the black iron might have been radioactive material, exposure to which caused mental deterioration. Others propose more exotic explanations involving phenomena beyond current scientific understanding, ideas that would have seemed ludicrous were it not for the documented strangeness of the case and the pattern of disappearances it spawned. A monograph published privately in 1959 by Dr. Richard Chambers, a physicist with an interest in anomalous phenomena, attempted to connect the Blackwood incident with other cases of mysterious disappearances and unusual geological features. "What the Blackwoods may have discovered," he wrote, "is evidence of what I term thin places, locations where the conventional properties of physical space become malleable. Indigenous peoples around the world have legends of such locations, often described as doorways to other realms. Modern physics, with its concepts of quantum entanglement and multiple dimensions, may be approaching a framework that could explain such phenomena scientifically." Chambers' work was largely ignored by mainstream academia, and he was eventually denied tenure at his university. His subsequent whereabouts are unknown. The only copy of his monograph available to the public is housed in the special collections of the Miskatonic University Library. In 1968, the last living person with direct connection to the Blackwood case passed away. Sarah Green, the daughter of Thomas Green, died at age 92 in a Philadelphia nursing home. According to staff, in her final days she spoke often of her father, repeatedly saying, "They're still in there. They're still listening. The walls got too thin at Hollow Ridge." A nurse's note in her medical file dated 3 days before her death records an unusual incident. Mrs. Green became extremely agitated around midnight, insisting she could hear her father calling to her. She claimed he was on the other side of the wall and needed help to come back through. When I tried to reassure her that she was safe in the nursing home, she became lucid for a moment and said, "It's November 17th again. They always reach out on November 17th. I reminded her it was actually April 23rd. She shook her head and said, "Time moves differently where they are." The Blackwood mine site today lies within an undeveloped section of Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The concrete seal placed in 1962 has been supplemented by natural overgrowth, making the exact location difficult to identify without specialized knowledge. Park rangers discourage off-trail hiking in the area, citing dangerous terrain and sensitive ecological habitats. Yet hikers occasionally report unusual experiences in the vicinity of Hollow Ridge. Park Service logs document dozens of cases of visitors becoming temporarily disoriented, experiencing unexplained audio phenomena, or feeling sudden onset of anxiety or dread. These reports cluster around a roughly 2-mile radius from the former mine site. Several hikers have required rescue after becoming inexplicably separated from their groups, though none have disappeared permanently. In 1956, a geology professor from Vanderbilt University, Dr. Eleanor Matheson, conducted soil and rock samples from the area as part of a broader study of Appalachian mineral compositions. Her published papers make no mention of anomalies, but her private research notes, made available after her retirement, tell a different story. Samples from Site BW7, believed to be a coded reference to the Blackwood location, exhibit unusual electromagnetic properties that warrant further investigation. Funding request pending. No further studies were ever conducted. Dr. Matheson's funding request was denied, and she abandoned that line of research entirely. When contacted in 1967 by investigators researching the Reynolds disappearance, she refused to discuss her findings, saying only, "Some doors are better left closed." The Tennessee authorities made the right decision to seal that place permanently. A former graduate assistant who worked with Dr. Matheson, speaking on condition of anonymity in 1968, provided additional context. The samples from Hollow Ridge were unlike anything else we studied. They seemed to absorb light in a way that defied explanation. More disturbing were the audio recordings we made during the testing process. When played back at high volume, you could hear something that sounded like voices, not recording artifacts, but actual voices speaking words that almost made sense. Dr. Matheson destroyed the tapes after listening to them repeatedly for several days. She became convinced they were saying specific things to her, personally. That's when she shut down the research. In 1963, a team from the United States Geological Survey conducted a comprehensive mapping project throughout the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Their published reports contain a notable omission. A circular area approximately 4 miles in diameter, centered on Hollow Ridge, is marked simply as topography unverified due to instrument malfunction. No explanation for this anomaly is provided in the official documentation. Dr. James Collins, who served on the USGS team, later became a professor at the University of Michigan. In a 1972 interview for an academic journal, he briefly addressed the omission. Some areas of the park presented unusual challenges for mapping. Equipment that functioned perfectly elsewhere would produce inconsistent results in certain locations. Rather than publish potentially inaccurate data, we chose to acknowledge the limitations of our survey. When pressed specifically about Hollow Ridge, Collins reportedly ended the interview abruptly. The journalist noted that Collins's hands had begun trembling visibly at the mention of the location. What are we to make of this fragmented history? 5 men entered a mine in 1879 and vanished without explanation. A researcher pursuing their story disappeared 74 years later in the same location. Workers sealing the mine reported inexplicable phenomena. Scientists who study the area abandoned their research under unclear circumstances. The pattern suggests something beyond conventional explanation, yet stops short of providing concrete answers. The Blackwood mine remains a historical anomaly, a case where the documented facts align with no satisfying conclusion. Perhaps most disturbing are the words attributed to Frederick Walsh, the geologist, reportedly spoken to a local shopkeeper days before the disappearance. "We've breached something down there that we don't understand. Isaiah thinks it's a mineral deposit, but I'm no longer certain it's a thing at all. It might be a place, a thin spot. And now that we've opened it, I don't think it can be closed again." The shopkeeper, Abigail Lawson, included this recollection in a letter to her sister, dated November 10, 1879. She described Walsh as ashen-faced and trembling, like a man who hasn't slept in days. When she inquired further, he allegedly replied, "Some things weren't meant to be found. Some spaces weren't meant to be entered." In the years following the incident, several families left Cades Cove, citing unspecified concerns about the area. By 1881, the population had decreased by nearly 20%. Church records from the period show an increase in prayer meetings and community gatherings focused on protection from unseen influences. A particularly telling document discovered in the archives of the Cades Cove Baptist Church in 1964 is a petition signed by 47 community members in December 1879. Addressed to the county authorities, it requests that the Blackwood mine be permanently sealed and the land declared unfit for habitation or development. The petition states that strange occurrences have multiplied since the abandonment of the mine, including livestock found dead without marks or cause, children speaking of figures seen at the edge of the forest, and sounds that call in voices familiar to each hearer, though the speakers are known to be elsewhere or deceased. County records show the petition was received, but no action was taken beyond noting it had been filed for consideration. Within 6 months, most of the signatories had relocated from the area. Settlers throughout Appalachia had long held superstitions about certain places in the mountains: hollows, where sounds carried strangely, ridges where animals wouldn't graze, caves that seemed to breathe on their own. These beliefs are typically dismissed as folklore or attributed to natural phenomena, misunderstood by isolated communities with limited scientific knowledge. Yet the Blackwood case stands apart, documented in county records, corporate filings, personal correspondence, and academic research. The disappearance of educated, rational men, engineers, and businessmen, rather than superstitious locals, suggests something beyond mountain legends. A curious detail emerges from land records following the Blackwood disappearance. Despite the potential value of the property and the legal ambiguity surrounding the brothers' estate, no one attempted to claim ownership of Hollow Ridge for decades. The land eventually defaulted to county ownership due to unpaid taxes, and later was incorporated into the national park. Even during periods of intensive resource development throughout Appalachia, when timber and mining companies aggressively acquired properties, Hollow Ridge remained untouched. In 1927, the Eastern Tennessee Coal and Timber Corporation conducted surveys throughout the region, assessing potential acquisitions. Their internal report, now housed in the corporate archives at the University of Tennessee, contains a brief but telling note regarding the former Blackwood property. Site deemed unsuitable for development despite favorable geological indicators. Local labor refuses to work the location. Recommend seeking alternative sites. What did the Blackwood brothers find beneath Hollow Ridge? What properties did their black iron possess? Did they breach some natural pocket of gas or radiation that caused hallucinations, paranoia, and eventually death? Or did they, as Walsh suggested, open something that could not be closed again? In 1965, during routine forest management activities, Park Service employees discovered an unusual feature approximately 1 mile from the former mine site, a perfect circle of dead vegetation, roughly 30 feet in diameter. Soil samples revealed no contaminants or pathogens that might explain the phenomenon. The official report concludes simply, cause undetermined. Area to be monitored for changes or expansion. A subsequent inspection in 1966 found the circle had increased to 35 feet in diameter. By 1967, it measured 40 feet across. No photographs of the site exist in public records, another peculiar omission given standard documentation protocols for ecological anomalies. The location is not marked on any publicly available park maps. The concrete seal placed by the Mining Authority in 1962 has never been breached. No further excavation has been attempted. The University of Tennessee's archives contain Howard Reynolds' research notes, but restrict access to scholars with specific credentials and institutional approval. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park maintains no official record of the mine's existence in its public historical materials. Perhaps most telling is the internal memo circulated within the Department of the Interior in 1965, obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request in 1988, regarding the former mining site at coordinates redacted within GSMNP boundaries. All inquiries should be directed to the regional office. No unauthorized research or excavation is permitted at this location. Ranger patrols of the area should be conducted in pairs and limited to daylight hours. The memo offers no explanation for these unusual precautions. When questioned in 1988, department officials claimed the restrictions were related to unstable ground conditions and potential environmental hazards from 19th-century mining practices. A former park ranger, Michael Gaines, who served in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park from 1963 to 1969, provided additional context in a 2001 interview for a regional historical journal. There were places in the park we were told to avoid or to approach only with specific protocols in place. Hollow Ridge was one of them. The official line was safety concerns due to old mining operations, but the precautions seemed excessive for typical hazards. We were instructed never to hike there alone and to carry two-way radios at all times, equipment that wasn't standard issue for most park areas in those days. Gaines continued, "In the summer of '67, I was assigned to patrol the ridge with another ranger, David Chen. About a mile from the old mine site, we found a clearing that wasn't on any of our maps. Perfect circle, maybe 40 feet across, completely devoid of vegetation. The ground felt strange underfoot, vibrating slightly, almost humming. Dave said he could hear whispering, though I heard nothing. We reported it when we returned to headquarters. The next day, a team from the regional office arrived and cordoned off the entire area. We were reassigned to other sectors, and I never heard an official explanation. Those who've hiked near Hollow Ridge in recent decades report a heavy silence that seems to absorb sound. Birds fall quiet. The wind stills. Some describe a sensation of being watched from the dense undergrowth. Most dismiss these impressions as the power of suggestion, the mind creating patterns where none exist, influenced by knowledge of the area's history. Yet the pattern persists. The silence, the disappearances, the sealed mine that no authority seems eager to examine, the researchers who abandon their investigations, the subtle warnings passed through official channels. Dr. Lillian Hart, a geophysicist who attempted to conduct a ground-penetrating radar survey of the area in 1992, described her experience in a private correspondence later leaked to paranormal researchers. The equipment malfunctioned in a way I've never seen before or since. Not simple failure, but active corruption of the data. The readings we managed to capture showed what appeared to be hollow spaces extending far deeper than any coal mine should reach, hundreds of feet below the surface, in patterns that defied normal mining practices. More disturbing were the anomalies that appeared to move between scans. When we returned the following day to verify the readings, we found our markers displaced and equipment tampered with, though there were no footprints or signs of human interference. Hart's University declined to fund further research at the site. Her preliminary findings were never published in peer-reviewed journals, and she eventually transitioned to studying less controversial geological formations in the American Southwest, the U.S. Forest Service records indicate that in 1977 a selective timber harvest was planned for a section of the park that included Hollow Ridge. The operation was abruptly canceled after the initial survey. The official explanation cited nesting habitats of protected species, yet no specific wildlife protection zones were established. Internal documents, obtained through a later Freedom of Information Act request, reveal that 2 members of the survey team reported extreme disorientation and auditory hallucinations while working near the former mine site. In 1983, a group of spelunkers from the Tennessee Cave Survey attempted to locate and map any natural cave systems in the vicinity of Hollow Ridge. Their expedition report contains a curious entry. Thermal imaging revealed what appeared to be a cold spot approximately 200 feet below the surface near the coordinates of the former Blackwood operation. Temperature differential inconsistent with groundwater or typical cave formations. Team reported equipment failures and unusual acoustic phenomena. Further investigation recommended with improved equipment and expanded team. No follow-up expedition was ever mounted. The Tennessee Cave Survey's records show the project was classified as completed, with no explanation for the change in status. Perhaps Isaiah Blackwood found exactly what he was looking for beneath the ridge, something unprecedented, revolutionary, valuable beyond measure. Perhaps in their ambition, the brothers breached a boundary that was never meant to be crossed. Perhaps what they discovered is still there, still waiting, still listening from behind the concrete seal and tons of collapsed earth. Or perhaps it's no longer contained at all. In 1965, a hunter in the remote forests near Hollow Ridge reported finding unusual markings carved into tree trunks, symbols similar to those described in Green's letters as appearing on the strange mineral samples. Park rangers investigated but found nothing. The hunter, Martin Graves, maintained until his death in 1967 that he had seen the markings. His final statement on the matter, "They looked fresh, like they'd been carved the day before, and they led away from the ridge, not toward it." The symbols Graves described, documented in a statement to park authorities but never photographed, consisted of concentric circles with lines radiating outward, like a child's drawing of the sun, but more precise, and shapes like letters, but not in any alphabet I recognize. This description bears striking similarity to markings reportedly found on stone fragments near the mine entrance, as noted in Joseph Miller's complete statement from 1879. The records of the Blackwood Mining Company remain sealed in the Tennessee State Archives, classified as historically significant but restricted from public access. The official reason cites unresolved legal questions regarding mineral rights and property ownership. Attempts by historians and journalists to access these documents have been consistently denied. In 1995, an environmental impact study was conducted throughout the national park to monitor air and water quality. One testing station, located approximately 3 miles from Hollow Ridge, consistently returned anomalous readings, elevated electromagnetic activity with no apparent source. The anomaly was noted in preliminary reports but omitted from the final published study. When questioned about this discrepancy, the lead researcher claimed the readings were the result of equipment contamination and not reflective of actual environmental conditions. Dr. Samuel Carter, who served on the environmental assessment team, later confided to colleagues that the explanation was fabricated. "We were instructed to remove those findings from the report," he allegedly stated at a private gathering in 1997. No explanation was given beyond national security concerns. I've conducted similar studies in 3 other national parks, and I've never been asked to alter data. Whatever's happening near Hollow Ridge, someone doesn't want it documented. A geological survey conducted by satellite imaging in 2001 revealed another anomaly, a subtle but distinct gravitational irregularity centered on the former mine site. The finding was flagged for further investigation, but subsequent research was redirected to other areas of the park. The original data was reclassified and removed from public databases. The scientist who identified the anomaly, Dr. Rebecca Liu, transferred to a different department within the U.S. Geological Survey shortly thereafter. And so the case of the Blackwood brothers remains unresolved, a footnote in Appalachian history, a curiosity mentioned occasionally in academic papers on 19th century industrial development or regional folklore. Most who encounter the story assume the brothers and their associates met with some conventional tragedy, a cave-in perhaps, or exposure to toxic gases that caused hallucinations before claiming their lives. Few consider the implications of Frederick Walsh's final recorded words or the pattern of silence that surrounds the case, or the peculiar precautions still taken by authorities regarding a mine abandoned nearly 150 years ago. Fewer still venture near Hollow Ridge after dark, when locals say the silence grows deeper and something can be felt moving beneath the earth, something that has been waiting patiently for someone to once again breach the thin places between this world and whatever lies beyond. A park ranger who requested anonymity shared this account in 2003. I've worked in 6 different national parks over 20 years. Every park has its legends and ghost stories. Most are just campfire tales, exaggerations built around mundane events. But Hollow Ridge is different. The accounts are too consistent, spanning too many years from too many credible sources. And there's the circle to consider. When asked to elaborate on the circle, the ranger continued, "The dead zone has been expanding slowly but steadily since it was first documented in the 60s. It's over 70 feet in diameter now. Nothing grows there. Insects won't cross the boundary. GPS and radio signals fail inside it. Most visitors who stumble upon it report feeling an immediate, overwhelming urge to leave. Those who resist this impulse describe hearing voices, often familiar voices, calling from just beyond the tree line. We're instructed to redirect hikers away from the area whenever possible, citing wildlife management or trail conditions. Never the truth. The most recent documented incident occurred in 2005, when 2 graduate students conducting authorized botanical research near Hollow Ridge went missing for 72 hours. They were found disoriented, but physically unharmed, approximately 5 miles from their last known location. Both students reported memory loss regarding the entire period of their disappearance. One of them resigned from the research project immediately upon recovery. The other completed the term, but changed academic focus from botany to computational linguistics, citing a sudden, inexplicable interest in patterns of communication beyond conventional language. In the words carved into the back page of Isaiah Blackwood's recovered journal, almost too faded to read, "We thought we were opening a mine. We were opening a door." The Blackwood mine remains sealed. The forest has reclaimed the site. The mountains keep their secrets, and perhaps for all our sakes, that is for the best. Yet one final document suggests the story may not be truly over. In the archives of the Knoxville Historical Society, among Elizabeth Blackwood's personal papers, is a letter she received in 1895, 16 years after her husband's disappearance. The envelope bears no return address or postmark, suggesting it was delivered by hand. The handwriting, according to experts who have examined it, appears to match Isaiah Blackwood's known samples, though with subtle distortions, as if written under duress or in unusual conditions. The letter contains only 3 lines. "The door opens both ways. We found the way in. They found the way out. Listen for them in the silence between words." The paper itself, when analyzed in 1972, was found to contain trace elements of an unidentifiable mineral with unusual electromagnetic properties. The letter is now sealed in a lead-lined container, and access is severely restricted. The wind still howls through the pines of Tennessee's Smoky Mountains with a particular tone in autumn. Those who've heard it say it carries echoes, not of animals or storms, but of something else entirely. Something that whispers from deep within the earth, something that waits. And sometimes, in the perfect silence of Hollow Ridge where birds never sing and leaves fall without sound, the waiting ends. The whispering grows clearer. The air thins. And for a moment, the boundaries between here and elsewhere, between now and then, between those who disappeared and those who remained, dissolve like morning mist. In those moments, if the accounts are to be believed, you can hear the Blackwood brothers still working in their mine, still digging, still searching, still opening doors that should have remained closed. You can hear Thomas Green's mechanical instruments ticking and measuring. You can hear Frederick Walsh's warnings too late to heed. And beneath it all, growing louder with each passing year, you can hear something else, something that found its way through the door they opened. Something that has been spreading, patient and persistent, through the thin places of the world. Something that knows your name and will whisper it when you're alone in the dark. The rangers of Great Smoky Mountains National Park maintain no official record of these phenomena. Inquiries about Hollow Ridge or the Blackwood Mine are redirected to historical archives or geological surveys. The circle of dead earth continues to expand, unremarked and unacknowledged. The silence deepens. The whispering grows louder for those who know how to listen. And somewhere in the bureaucratic labyrinth of government archives, a file exists with a simple directive regarding the area. No access, no excavation, no recording equipment, maintain containment protocols until permanent solution can be implemented. The file is dated 2007. The permanent solution remains unspecified. The Blackwood brothers went looking for wealth beneath the mountains. They found something else entirely, something that continues to echo through the years, calling to those who might open the door once again. Listen carefully as you fall asleep tonight. In the silence between your thoughts, in the space between heartbeats, you might hear them too. And if you do, if you hear a voice that sounds like your own, calling from just beyond the wall, remember the fate of the Blackwood brothers. Some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed again.